Welcome back, everybody. It's another episode of From Conflict to Collaboration. I'm your co-host, Chris Angel, here with your host, Tara Weir. Tara Weir, hello there.
Hello, Chris. How are you today?
I'm fantastic. It's another episode of your wonderful show.
Yes.
We're talking about, when we don't see eye to eye, which never happens. We always see eye to eye all the time.
Right. Work, home, life, everything.
Everything. It's always on fire. It's always on point.
If only that were the case, but it's not.
I know. Well, you do a lot of work with corporations, teams, managers, C-suite people. Like, what made this come up for you? What made you think of this particular thing?
Yes. Well, I most of my clients are either dealing with it directly or coaching somebody in how to approach conversations when there is differences in opinion or even different ways of going about things, process. So I definitely wanted to give people the tools just to just start thinking about how they approach those situations when they don't see eye to eye.
So, for example, if I'm a manager and I have somebody in my team who is doing something a certain way, and I'm like, that can't happen. We got to change that. And in the past, I may have been like, I'll lecture them. I'll say like, listen, you got to do that different. You got to do that different. Or I send a nice memo, send the memo, or whatever it is that I'm trying to get them to change what they're doing, and they're not changing.
Right.
And we're not seeing eye to eye. And this is where I think the conflict starts to happen, right? We're like, if I sent a memo and they changed, there would be no conflict. They'd be like, sweet, everybody does what I say to do. That's perfect. Everybody does what I say to do.
Right.
Perfect.
No, doesn't happen that way. And
right.
And really, like, so an example I want to give you is that I have a client that supervises a team, a manager and an assistant manager. Mm-hmm. And the assistant manager and the manager are very similar. And the client that I'm working with is coaching the assistant manager because the assistant manager needs to talk about something with the manager. And they're really nervous. They're very hesitant. They keep putting it off.
Oh, yeah.
And the client believes that it's because there's something very similar about them. They're very similar in the way that they go about things.
Right. Interesting.
So I've been coaching my client on how to address that.
When you get into like the politics of it, like not politics as in like corporate politics, but like the human dynamics politically, like, oh, I don't want to offend them or I don't want to whatever. And so we keep like filtering and avoiding. Yeah. Perfect. Avoiding all that stuff. So got it. Well, I think anybody listening to this could relate to this by now. I suppose we could even put it in a personal context. There are people in your life that you want to have something shift. And right. Even that doesn't shift. We like my kids, for example, are 12 and 14. And there are certain battles I pick and choose.
Right.
And sometimes I don't pick them when I should, because I'm like, oh, I don't want to go through this conversation, and I filter, I avoid even there. So I think this conversation really could apply anywhere.
Yes, absolutely. Same here. I mean, I've got a teenage daughter and 15, and I definitely pick mine. Right. But I try to approach it in a way that will help her and I have an open mind and an open heart with each other.
I want to go into like what there is to do about it. But before I do that, can you give me just a glimpse of like, let's just assume that we knew how to do it. Like what starts to open up on the other side for teams, managers, parents, when we actually know how to communicate well, like to create the change? Like what happens? What opens up?
On the other side?
Yeah. Like what's possible? Like we go from a relationship that's kind of like not fully transparent, we're not communicating, and so that affects our productivity, our work life experience. Right. What have you seen on the other side of people getting this right?
Oh man, well, one of the best was they brought both work and personal stories to me on how they've approached things differently, and one of them is a client that is a mom as well, and she gave me multiple business ones, and then she shared that her son was really struggling with math at the end of the school year here, and his choices about how he, whether he got his grade up or not, was really going to affect the whole family, because there were going to be potential for summer school and rides there and back, and he wouldn't have a job, and he wouldn't be able to do driver's ed, and I mean, all these things that they had planned around him being able to do certain things this summer were really being impacted. And so we talked about how she could talk with him in a way that would help him hear her and help him own what was going on. And so, I worked with her on a process that really helps keep the person that you're speaking to in a calmer state. So less of the judgmental language that makes their girl go, and before it was like, she'd lecture, he'd react, she'd react, and it would just, and they'd walk away or run away from each other pretty much. Yeah. So we talked about what the conversation could look like, when.
And I was just gonna say, without telling me the how yet, like, tell me like what happened for them. Like what was
he totally owned his grade, and he got really motivated because he really identified for himself what the impact would be, and then also what the punishment, so to speak, would be. And I, that's how she described it, but it was more of like, what would be the consequences of him making certain choices? Right. Because it was really going to affect a lot of other people, but not him nearly as much. So, he was thoughtful and he was owning his situation. And in the long run, he got his grade up, so he didn't have to do summer school. And he took ownership of it. And she just listened more than she'd ever listened before. And they connected. It was beautiful the way she described it. We both teared up.
They went from like conflict and not being able to figure it out and like lecture, all the stuff that was like not working for, I don't know how long that lasted, to like this other approach that had them, had him take responsibility for it, had her just kind of sit back and listen. He like almost solved his own problem and everything worked itself out. Like what manager or executive doesn't want that in their company, where you're like, you just sit back and you listen and you let them solve their problem, and then they just off they go and they create the change that you've always been trying to, push on them.
Right. Well, the challenge is that we approach these situations with judgments and with underlying needs that we don't call out. And those needs are driving our behavior and we don't realize it. And that's what drives the judgments. And then we share those judgments, whether we want to own it or not, like a way to share a judgment and you're trying to kind of pretend it's not a judgment is to say, I feel like you're not really responsible, young man, right? So I feel like you're not responsible. Okay, that's a judgment. It's something that's going to send his hackles up. So, we talk about that.
Right. Wow, that's amazing. Okay. Now I have to know how. How did that happen? Like, so this is what was not working, but we saw the outcome. Like, how does that happen then? What did you walk them through to create that?
Well, we start with what's the circumstance? Total observation. I said, if there was a video camera watching you and your son, what would you describe as the situation? And her first sentence was, it was convoluted. Well, she started it with saying, well, it would be my son and I talking. And then she said about the fact that he is failing his class and that he's not he doesn't realize the impact it's going to have this summer. And I said, okay, time out. Let's back up and talk about the observation. The observation, my son and I are talking about his grade and how it affects the summer. There's the observation. And then I say, okay, so when you experience this observation, you see the circumstance, what do you feel? And she said, I feel frustrated and worried. Frustrated that he's not getting his act together, that he's being irresponsible, and so then she vents and she lets some of her judgments go. And I'm worried because if he doesn't pass this class, he has summer school and I have to drive him and that affects my life. And so, so she let go of all of those. And I said, okay, so you're feeling worried and frustrated. And then I said, because what do you need? And she realized, she's like, I need cooperation. She needed to be able to trust that he would take this seriously. She needed, those are really, I think the main one was and respect. So trust and respect. And so I said, okay, well, let's just try that. So, when you and I are talking about this, about your grade and about the summer, I feel frustrated and worried because I need trust and respect. I need to trust that you'll take care of this, and I need respect of my time and my summer. And, would you be willing to talk with me right now about how you could be motivated because I want you to be motivated. So
Hmm.
what do you think? Would you be willing to explore how you can get motivated?
Beautiful.
And she did it and left it at that. And he just sat there and was thoughtful. He's 15, just turned 15.
So she left it there. I mean, she presented her observation and what she needed, and
Mm-hmm.
she just kind of, and then she stopped and just let him chew on that. And
Yeah, because
yeah,
the circumstance we can agree on. Feelings are a vulnerable way of sharing ourselves. And
mm,
truthfully, whether we can mentally argue with it or not, when somebody shows up with a feeling, not
yeah.
I feel like you're a jerk, but
Yeah, right.
when you say that, I
Yeah.
feel
Yeah.
I feel uncertain, or
Mm,
I feel nervous that you're not trustworthy anymore, or whatever it is that my feelings are leading me to, because I need to be able to trust you.
yeah.
So the feelings allow that opening of the heart, which then allows the listener's heart to more likely open.
Mm,
The need is fair, right? It's like, okay, I have these needs, you have these needs, they're universal.
yeah.
And then finally, the request. And truly, it's a request. It is not a demand. We can't make anybody do anything. We can't control anybody's behavior. The only thing we can have influence or true choice about is ourselves.
Mm,
So it's saying, would you be willing? And then when that person sits there with that choice, they're more likely to truly connect with you when you've given them the opportunity to decide. And I've said this to my kids before, and my son's like, no, I'm not ready to talk about this.
mm,
Like, okay, well, when you are, I'd like to talk, because
yeah.
it gives them the empowerment and the strength or the permission to truly be engaged or not. And
Yeah.
I need to respect that.
Yeah. Yeah. Wow. It's so good. I know we're in this particular example, we're talking about a parenting conversation, but really is the same in a corporate setting where, there's something that you want, if you can just make an observation and then get clear on what you need.
Yes, absolutely. And I think, one of my clients, as she was coaching her person, that the assistant manager talked to the manager,
Right.
was really what she needed to say as a supervisor of this person was, what I need is for your team. What I need is your team to thrive. Like, what I need to see is a healthy team, right? What I need is that you take responsibility, right? So a little bit of it, like, here's what I need. But as a supervisor, I need to trust that my team is functioning at its best. I need to trust that they're working through their problems, and that's making them stronger. I need to trust that people walking into this store will know that they are in a good, thriving, positive environment. And I need to know that you will connect with this person. So now what I want to explore with you is, and if you're willing, let's talk about how I can support you in talking to this person, because you haven't done it for the last 2 conversations we've had, and it's time. So what I need is to know what your action steps will be by Friday. Here's the by when. And then, and really, ultimately, what I haven't said yet is that all of this has to be, the underlying of this has to be compassion. Like, we have to find in ourselves how we could potentially understand what's going on for that other person, right? So we were talking about it. I'm like, can you imagine how, and this is her first management job. And I'm like, I remember my first management job, and I remember dealing with conflict alone was uncomfortable, let alone your supervisor.
Right.
So I'm like, I understand that. And so if you can start with that compassion, like, I know it's not comfortable, and I know that this is new to you, and I understand, like, have that compassion. That's a great way to start. And like, the mom can say, I understand that you have lots of choices every day, and that really what you want to do is just have fun with your friends. I totally understand that. And I also understand that you want to get your license, and that you want to have freedom this summer. So I understand that. So I really am here for you to figure out how you can really get what you want.
So the end of that conversation then is either some type of a question like, so how what I want to know is, how can you be motivated, or what motivates you? I want to know that. Or maybe it's not a question, but more of a statement, like in the manager example, like, so here's what we need to talk about. We need to talk about how you're going to do this. and it's not so much a question, but a statement, but then either way, what happens on the next side of that is you give space for them to talk about it. Yes?
Yes, yes. And usually, because there's a need by the speaker, usually that request has something to do with the need. So the supervisor talking to this assistant manager could say, I need, I need confidence. I want to have confidence in my team. So I need assurance that there's some movement happening here. So would you be willing to explore how this can be done by Friday, and what do you need from me?
Perfect.
So it's like making a request to meet that need, and it's collaboration. It's an opening for collaboration.
Yeah, beautiful. Do you spend time in that moment, back in the manager example, having a conversation right there, or is that an assignment? Like, here's what I need, you go away and think about it and come back to me Friday with your thoughts, or do you actually talk about it in that moment?
Well, I think that's for the person, like the supervisor's in the moment decision. Like, does this person appear ready, right? Are they ready to talk about it? And I think after, and this is where the leadership piece comes in, where the supervisor and I talked about leadership, because there's a certain expectation the leader has. This is the third time, so this is kind of like, this is the last time. So she was drawing a boundary as a leader, and we talked about how she could give her a by when date, which helps motivate somebody. She gave her, she was going to give her options. I said, you could say, are you open to options? I could give you some ideas. One of them was, okay, I could come with you and I can mediate that because I understand you both and I've worked with you both for a long time. I could have Tara come in and work with you to help you get confidence in speaking your voice in the face of conflict. So that was helping the supervisor meet her needs through working with this person and being the leader that she's supposed to be, and then helping this young manager be the leader that she wants to be.
Beautiful. Yeah. So good. I feel like the part of what makes this work, you correct me if I'm wrong, is what makes this work is the connection that happens in the moment. Like when there's connection, the other person wants to kind of jump in, and rather than feeling like they're being told or scolded or something, they actually now feel like they want to make a difference in the situation when there's connection. So
absolutely.
Is that right?
Yeah. And I think the connection comes from the person who's speaking, who's bringing this subject up. Yeah. There needs to be ownership on their need, because if my underlying needs are driving me and the judgments are coming out, which is really common. I mean, it's really common to be like, listen, and then just spew what I think they're doing wrong, or what, this is unacceptable. And it's so easy to approach a situation where the listener is going to immediately be defensive. They're going to immediately be on guard. And if we start a conversation that way, that's a really hard beginning for connecting. And then it's and then repeat. It's like, wash, rinse, and repeat, because then in that conversation, the person will probably say something that again triggers us. So we have to then practice getting to a place where we can say, okay, I'm triggered. My thought is a judgment. I'm about to criticize them. And instead I'm going to say, I'm feeling frustrated by what you said. Because what I need is, and then being really clear about what I need. Would you be willing? So it's this practice, so where it becomes natural, because through a conversation, there's just like trigger, and depending on how disconnected they are, it could just be trigger constantly.
Totally. And if I felt like you weren't being sincere, and I had heard you use this script before, would you be willing? I'm like, you're scripting me right now, and you're just trying to manipulate me to do the thing that you want me to do. But this is why I like the whole, it's not really throwing yourself under the bus, but it is taking responsibility for what you need, and then having some empathy in there somewhere, so that the other person isn't defensive, but actually open and receptive to wanting to make it work, Exactly.
I mean, a request is not a manipulation. A request, right. and I think you just said it too, is like, if I'm sincerely making a request and owning my needs, owning my side to say, here's what I need from you. Here's what I need in the situation. And, and I have to be prepared that they might say no. Like, they might be like, no, I can't do that. Like, okay, well, now let's talk about our options. If you're not able to do that, then let's talk about plan B, So but it's much less conflictual and confrontative when we're owning our stuff, when I'm being honest about being frustrated, instead of just being frustrated and then all my judgments come out. But there's a certain side of work that I have to do on my side. And that's the mindset piece that I do with my clients about, okay, so share all your judgments. Now let's get clear about what truly the feelings are here and what truly are the needs here and what is a reasonable request you can make. And then what might you have in common that you can really understand where they're coming from. So it's helping them see the other side in some ways before they even approach that. Because we all share human needs. We all have a common humanity that is at the core of everything. And at our core of humanity is a need for connection.
Beautiful. Yeah. So true. So good. Well, I mean, so what's possible on the other side of sort of moving through this process? I'd say mastering it, but I don't think you even need to have mastery. I think you just start doing it and the process sort of does a lot of the heavy lifting.
Yes.
On the other side of that is what you said before, which is, people all of a sudden start to create solutions. They're bringing their own ownership to the conversation. They're moving things forward. So you don't have to keep pushing water up a hill, right? It's like people start taking ownership of stuff and things start moving faster.
Yeah. And that human connection happens and that motivation. And that's where the magic happens in work and in relationships and family and in the world.
Beautiful. I love it. This is the kind of work that you do, Tara. I mean, I love that, whether it's one-on-one or it's working with teams. How do people reach out to you if they want to learn more about what you do?
They can go to my website, powerfulconnectionsnow.com, and they can do a little form at the bottom, and that connects them to a discovery call. There's a link actually to the discovery call, and they can also just send me an email through the bottom of my website.
Got it. So they can actually click a button on your site that takes them to a scheduling page where they can actually book time on your calendar. Yeah. Yes,
exactly. And there's a discovery call. I love free discovery calls where we can just start to explore the topic and then see if we're a good fit for coaching, so that I can help them, because it's not something we just change our mind about. It's something that we have to keep changing our mind about and building the skill set and having the practice to be able to become more natural at it. So we start with, let's really explore what's going on, and then we can see if we're a fit.
Yeah, that's beautiful. Great stuff today, Tara. Thank you very much. Until next time.
Thanks, Chris.